Right, here we go again. So technology is always here, but we can always fix it. That's my best thing that I can say today. And we are bringing up a new panel, a beautiful panel from all over the place. So they will tell more about themselves. What's the background? All different professions, but brain health is connecting them. So let's just go to this topic. I will bring up Charm first. I think everyone is fixed. All the technology is in place. I see Miss Chao so beautifully there, and Dr. Bindu. All right, let's bring up Charm first. Hi, Charm. How are you today?
Hi, Andrea. It's another good day today.
Yes, beautiful day, beautiful sessions. I really enjoyed the morning. It was so much information. I had to make notes myself. So
I know,
inspired after it's
and it
coming
was
from.
very tweetable information. That was so much.
Yes, I think it's very relatable. It's very good and it's relating to our lives. So thank you so much for being here and adding more to the value. I will be bringing up a gentleman, and Arman is here. So let me bring Arman. Hi, Arman. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this panel and inviting me for it. Looking forward to our discussions.
Of course, we cannot miss you from it. You are here from the beginning.
My fourth year running, being part of the Global Empowerment Service.
Exactly.
So, great job, Andrea, in bringing all of us together.
Thank you so much. And then I have Dr. Bindu here. Hi, Dr. Bindu. How are you today?
Hi, Andrea. Looking forward to this unique experience and especially unique to me for I'm a first timer.
I love first timers. I have to say, I just love. Thank you and enjoy this beautiful experience and cherish it because that's the first time, right? And then another first timer coming up, Chia, and her beautiful daughter is supporting her with the technology, and I just love the family working together. So, thank you so much for being here, Chia. How are you today?
Okay, I'm fine, thank you. This is like I'm the first time, and I'm not technological savvy, so my daughter is helping me out a lot. Because I come
Beautiful.
from a generation that is we don't use a lot of technology. I'm in my 70s. So,
Thank you so much. So it's a beautiful, diverse panel talking about brain health today. So I will go backstage and I let you do your topic. I will be popping back up around 45 minutes. And thank you so much for sharing. Charm, the stage is yours.
Thank
Thank you.
you,
thank
Andrea.
you.
Hello, everybody who's watching and who will be watching the replays. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So today we have another panel discussion, and it is on cultural fusion in brain health. It's a very interesting topic. When I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, interesting." How interesting it's going to be. I mean, there's a lot. When you take brain health, it just doesn't mean all the physiological parts of the brain and the functioning of the brain. So mental health and emotional well-being is also an integral part of brain health. So we shall be addressing that as well. We've got a very august panel here, and I would like them to introduce themselves, because who knows them better than themselves, right? Hmm.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask Aman to go ahead and introduce herself first. The only thorn among the roses, Aman.
Well, my privilege to be in this panel. So, thank you. So, I'm a political analyst, born in Kuala Lumpur, based in Melbourne now, but who made a mid-career switch to mental health. So, I'm also a registered counselor, a family dispute resolution practitioner, and a mediator. So, my shift to mental health was based on a conviction that world peace actually needs inner peace. Without inner peace and well-being, we cannot really have world peace. I had the privilege of serving a community mental health center in Kuala Lumpur as the Director of Research and Advocacy. I was also the project manager for Malaysia's only child dedicated helpline during the pandemic. And I occasionally write on mental health issues for the Star newspaper. Great honor again to be here with all of you.
It's so wonderful to have you here, and I so resonate with what you said, that world peace rather begins from inner peace. I mean, that's so beautiful. Yeah, thank you, Aman. Now I'd like to go to Chia. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself as well? You've got up to a minute, so it doesn't have to be
Maybe
that
after
quick.
Dr. Window is better. Okay, you
Okay.
want me to speak now, is it?
Yeah. Yes.
Uh,
Just
bas- Basically, I'm a Malaysian and I'm always based in Malaysia. And I'm a 71-year-old lady that actually I was trained as a staff nurse in England. And then later on, I came back to Malaysia. And actually, I work. for different organizations, and eventually in 1996, I ended up as a hospice home care service. I mean, of course, in every country, hospice services are very different. For us, most of the time when I joined hospice was in 1996. Most of these palliative care or hospice care were actually home-based. So we as nurses, we go into their house actually to help them with management as well as like to, because when we go into a person's house, that type of care is very different because you are not in control. They are in control, the patient and the relatives. And of course, we like go into like different races. There's no say, okay, we only serve one race. In Malaysia, they actually the three main races are Chinese, Indians, and actually Malays. So we have to be very sensitive to the needs. And that's where we have to learn to tread very carefully and not to impose our actually rules on anybody else. But to hold
Yeah,
them out
thank you,
and
Chia. Thank you, Chia. Yeah, and for your brief introduction. I'll go more towards this topic later. And ladies and gentlemen, I've actually had first experience with what Chia had offered because my mom was in terminal state when Chia came to help us with hospice support. And it made a big difference in how we, all of us, the family and my mom met her end, right? So yes, thank you, Chia. I will come back to you on that topic. Now I'd like to go to Bindu to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm a bit of an outlier here among the panelists. I'm a consultant oncologist way back in Bangalore, India. I work at a regional cancer center. And for me, mental health issues, as you know, my field is diagnosing, treating, and well, not exactly curing, but helping to cure cancer. So, mental health issues are so much an integral part of acceptance, tolerance, and surviving afterwards, surviving with a purpose that is worth living for. So I'm hoping that towards it, some of these issues can be brought up in this panel. And let's see how it goes. Back to you, Sham.
Thank you, Bindu. Aman. And please don't forget, I'm going to go back to all of you as well. Some fun fact about yourself, right? At the end. Aman, your introduction.
I introduced myself first.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Did you say a fun fact about yourself?
I didn't say a fun fact, but I'll add on the fun fact. The fun fact is I love spending time with my wife, enjoying multicultural cuisines, and we try different cuisines from time to time.
Ah, a cuisine lover. Yeah, I think most of us here are.
Look, food
And
brings us
Bindu,
together,
I know.
right? And I think those of us from Malaysia particularly will appreciate how food can be such a uniting factor for the different communities, not to mention language as well with Manglish, but really food, I think, that brings us together.
Yeah, I think, it's like commonly known to Malaysians, like they don't ask you, how are you? They ask, what have you eaten yet? Or, like that. So food is a big culture here in Malaysia. Yeah. Bindu, fun fact.
Fun fact or actual fact? Actual fact.
Okay, actual fact, that's fun perhaps.
Okay, actual fact. I am terrified of the stage. And that was supposed to be a fact a few years back before I joined Toastmasters. And to tell the truth, it has diluted that fact, but it still exists. So this is a challenge. And let's say maybe I'm a glutton for challenges. So that's it.
Okay, your fun fact, Bindu, is you are a glutton for challenges. Interesting. I'm going to throw some challenges at you. No, I'm not. Yeah. Chia, fun fact, something we don't know perhaps about you.
See, the fun fact is that being senior is really good. You can everything blame it on seniority. Oh, I forgot. I don't know. That's a fun fact. So everybody
being
will
a
say,
senior.
yes, you say,
Being
so you forgot about it. You see, even though you really might not really actually forget about it. So you put everything as like any fault you do is you put it on seniority that I'm told.
I hope your family and friends are not listening in. They're going to know that anything that goes wrong, you're putting the blame on your seniority. And come off it here. I know you're so young at that. Don't blame it on your seniority. But yeah, okay, that's a good tip because I'm also going to be a senior citizen in a couple of years. This year. Oh my God, this year. I'll get all those benefits.
The benefits.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So thank you for your introductions, dear panelists. And now we start conversation. Yes. Now, Aman, this
Yes.
is kind of in your area of expertise compared to the rest of us here on this panel.
So
So
we all
I'm going
learn from
to,
each other. We all learn from each other. I mean, I may be a mental health professional, and some of us might be in the mental health field. But look, mental health is about the community, and so we all really learn from each other. And looking forward to that.
yeah, so good. So I'm going to ask the first question, cultural fusion in mental health. What comes to your mind?
Okay, so many things come to my mind. Great topic, by the way. So, look, I'll first start with the brain, right? I mean, and I'll bring culture into it as well. But let's look at the brain. Look at the brain. We all know where the brain is. The brain is like a machine, and such an advanced machine, right? It's fascinating how the different components are working. It's like you think a car engine is complicated. Imagine how the brain works, right? With the left side of your brain, the right side of the brain, the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe. So there's so much happening there. And look, an amazing machine that controls and functions all over our body, whether it's our intelligence, our creativity, our emotions. And when we look at the literature here, Sham, and I want to share with the panel, is that it strongly suggests that cultural experiences shape our brain functions. And some research also suggests that it may also shape our brain structure. So what this means is that when we have sustained exposure that we have to cultural experiences, and by culture, I don't only mean here, when we have the culture word in the title, culture as in only ethnicity. It's not only Malay, Indian, Chinese, or, but culture could come from ethnicity, could come from race, could come from religion, could come from nationality, could come from even age, socioeconomic group, it could come from gender. So from so many aspects that culture brings together, right? But those cultural experiences that we have, and some of them might be multiple, some of them might be overlapping, and that's what actually affects our neural function and how we react. So look, there's been a lot of work, Sharm, on this, on cultural psychology and cognitive neuroscience in the recent years, and the evidence is very strong here that our experiences, like for example, studies that show about Asian and Western culture. I'll share a very interesting one. When studies have focused on photographs, for example, you will see that Asians who come from more of a collectivist society based on Hofstede's dimensions focus more on the context as a whole, the background of the photo. But same studies have shown in a Western society where it's more focused on individuals, the emphasis is really on the object and less on the context, right? So for me, this is fascinating, right? Because when we talk about culture and the word fusion, we are bringing in, you see, the reason there's a fusion is there are differences, but we also come together with our differences. And for me, the important part here is recognizing here, number one, that culture affects our attention, how our brain works, our processing of information, how we categorize things, our level of reasoning as well. And at the same time, culture also brings us together, because as we try to understand each other, appreciate each other, that's so closely related to well-being. There is a risk of us getting lost in translation. And, one may say, right, like, okay, Western communities think like this, Asian communities think like this. But what I would like to say is that, look, we should also, while we should be aware about our cultural identities and cultural attributes, we should also not forget that we live in a globalized world where we complement each other. So if you're running a company, and if you do follow this dichotomy that I talked about, the Asians focusing more on the context and through the way their brain processes information, or Westerners processing the information in a way that's more on the object, but maybe that can complement each other for more of a cohesive look at the picture as a whole for our workforce. And finally, I just want to highlight the point that cultural fusion is such an important term here. So I address the brain part, and the brain, there's a science to the brain, right? And culture affects brain. But when we look at culture and cultural fusion, I think we need to bear in mind here that we live in this world where we see cultural fusion in so many different ways, right? Many of us are living in multicultural countries. Even in a country like India, there's so many different ethnic groups, for example, right? So where we cannot all say that all Indians are like this, for example, right? So because they are different, and I think recognizing that we live in very diverse societies and countries, migration has made us even more diverse. On top of that, we are working, we are traveling more, we live in this globalized phase where there's so much more exchanges. The internet has made that possible. And also there are many people like myself, I take a lot of pride in being a third culture kid. I was born to Bengali parents in Malaysia. While Malaysia is my main identity, I live in Australia as well. And all this fusion of identity really makes it such a richer experience and an opportunity for us to maximize the benefits for our brain health.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that about you. Like, you're from going Bengali parents, then brought up in Malaysia, and now you're in Melbourne. So yes, so much there that you shared, Ahmad. That, well, it's very, something to think about. We take it for granted, that the cultural experiences that are shaping our brain structure and actually brain function, that's so deep there. That itself is so deep, and everything that's interconnected. Yeah. And of course, it's merging like, all these cultural differences. When you said in the context of with the Western people think about the individual, the focus on the individual is that very good example that you gave. And Asians generally, focus on the context of it. So yeah, I think some of that is kind of merging, that it's not so,
Absolutely.
like it's kind of a gray area. So it's just that the world has become smaller, as you
It's
said.
fascinating. Can I just add with that, Shami? You're absolutely correct. And the evidence that actually culture shapes this is, look, we have also seen studies, for example, on how the an Asian person living in a Western country, how their neural functions take place, and you will see that for them, that contextual reasoning or contextual understanding is much lesser than somebody who's been entirely exposed only to an Asian culture. So you're absolutely correct that we are blending, we are learning, and we are growing together.
Yeah, we're growing together. That's the best part of it, right? So next I'll go to Chia. Chia, would you like to add anything to what Aman has said, or would you go ahead and talk about your experiences when you go on to your hospice work, and what's important? Is it brain health? Is it the emotional health? I think we had this conversation, and you said yes, towards the end, what you need to help your patients or is the emotional and spiritual aspect of it. Would you like to talk to us a bit about that?
I think in my course of work, of course, what Dr. Simon talked is actually very scientific and all that study-based, but mine is more towards experience-based because I come from a very, what you call it, cosmopolitan kind of country. We have different cultures, we have to adapt and all that. And I think I'm also fortunate or unfortunate, you can call it. I'm a Chinese, but I'm actually be in many other religions. So actually, sometimes it does change each of perspective. Yeah, I think that is more towards an environment thing. Which environment we are actually attached to. You see, it doesn't mean that once you are born with that culture, you will die with that, the thought of that culture. No, we change over a period of time. We evolve. All of us will evolve. Today, I might be thinking like that, but in 10 years' time, my thought might be different depending on who I am associating a lot more. So our association actually is very important. How we actually change our mindset. To me, it's more towards mindset than actually a cultural thing. Of course, culture does influence us, but my culture thing can be changed. You see, our belief system can be changed, but it is not a template like once I'm born with that culture forever, I will die with that type of thinking. I don't subscribe to that. Because I think all of us will evolve, and according to our time. I think the trouble we have nowadays is because we want people to think the way we think. And that's where all the problems start. You see, if we allow people to be what they are and accept, there's always the word we say we must tolerate people's religion, we must tolerate people. I wouldn't want that word. I want to use the word to accept. Because tolerance, we always have what they call it, breaking point. Whereas acceptance is acceptance. So to me, I think words are very important because I like to study about how actually words can influence our thoughts and our mind. And of course, eventually our surrounding. So when I go into politics care, and we went to people's homes, you see, so we had to adapt. What is my thought might be wrong, but others might be correct. But I cannot say I must impose my views onto others. For example, I let you know, in one of these talks, when I was a nurse, we were always trained. Okay, even a patient is in a coma, we must talk to them because we doesn't know. We always say that hearing is the last to go. So even we want to turn patient, we will address the patient's by name before we do the action. But when I went to this home care patient, and the parents said, because the patient was already on the dying phase now, said, don't talk to her, don't call her name. Because in that belief, they believe that if I call her name, her soul will not be able to leave her body back to stay on. So for me, actually, it is actually against what I've been taught. But because I have to respect their belief, so I have to just do it a bit more slowly to let them, be at peace. Even those the dead, I don't know what they are thinking, to be honest. But those that are living is very important. Sometimes you always think of the patient. To me, it's not always the patient. The person who lives after the death of the patient is also very important. Because a lot of them will live with a lot of guilt if they don't do that. So when we do things, we have to explain why and why we don't. You see, and then if we do that, then for them, the grieving parents, they will have a better understanding because we will have a lot of people giving you this suggestion, saying that you have done this wrong, you have done that wrong. But we have to explain to them and then see in which way they can adapt. And that is the most important to us. To me, at least to me, patient's wish is not always the ultimate. Of course, you say in ethics it is patient.
Sorry, what was the last part you said, Chia? Patience? What?
Patient's wish is not always.
It's not. Okay, right. Patient's wish is not always addressed. Right?
Because we have to look at the whole picture, not the
exactly
the
family.
Very so you have to. The patients must be. For example, diabetes.
I think the living will, right? And I mean, if there is no living
will, sometimes it's not easy because if you want to deal this with a holistic one, you see, we must remember patients change their mind.
All right. Depending on that state of health, right? I mean, when the organs are not functioning well, I mean, they're dying. So, I mean, they're shutting down, so to speak. Yeah. And
for example, I am just giving you examples. Like I have a friend, a close family member. She already wrote a living will that she doesn't want any intervention. But when he comes to reach that position, when actually his eating issues have a problem, actually she changed her mind. Now she has a intestinal nutrient. You see, they change their mind. It doesn't mean that once they have written that will, it will be forever. Because at this time, sister can decide. You see? So, of course, she cannot talk. She has actually I think final system Parkinson.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. It's like, we are constantly evolving as you started your conversation, but culturally we are constantly evolving in the sense our own cultural identities change with the environment, change with our physical state and our mental state, and it matters. That evolution affects, the cultural our cultural fusion in brain health, so to speak, topic we're talking about. And there's a lot to say in life and in death. We got to respect the individuals and as well as the supporting families, wishes or their culture, so to speak, right?
To balance up is the most difficult part.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I know. It's so real. This conversation is getting very real, gentlemen. We are facing things as it is. Now we come to Bindu Joseph, if you would care to add on to any of the panelists, or perhaps, like in your area of oncology, and cancer, what challenges do you face with your patients with regards to treatment or whatever that you have in mind for them? Could you please speak a bit about that?
Okay, let's just start with what mental health means to us as a doctor. Don't get scared with the definition because I'll make it a little simpler afterwards. For us, it's the optimal neurocognitive sensory motor functioning of our patients with full knowledge of whatever disease status they have and the consequences. Simpler words. Just their ability to live a normal life, fully being aware that they have cancer or they have had cancer and they have to live with the complications of it. Now, that is what we would call optimal mental health. And what are the hindrances to this? Can you take a guess? I'd say two major ones: myths and society. Myths on cancer and how society deals with these myths. The society that the patient depends so much on. Let me just give you an example. Take the Indian woman. Let me come to Indian society. Cervical cancer is one of the most prevalent cancers. In fact, the top two, as far as India is concerned. And 98% of cervical cancers are caused by the human papilloma virus, a sexually transmitted virus. Sham, were you aware of that?
No.
So, see, Shamini, if someone as educated as you are not aware of that, think of the general population and the majority of patients who are uneducated. I mean, the patients who come to me in a regional cancer center, they're not aware of it. It's the male that is responsible. But ultimately, what does society do? How does society treat women with cervical cancer? Labels, immoral, or it's because they got the evil eye. Have they done something in the past that caused all this? And what do they face? They face rejection, abandonment, and accusations, non-acceptance. Now, in this scenario, can you imagine them fitting into what I had defined earlier as a state of positive mental health? It's not going to happen. So, to your answering your question, currently the two most important hindrances I have towards my patients' mental health are, yes, cancer myths and society's attitude towards them. I hope I made some sense, Germany.
Oh, you made good sense, and it takes me back to cases of people's experiences that I've watched. And coming from Malaysia and now residing in India, we see a lot of this, what you mentioned about myths, and also the societal perceptions or societal beliefs that can hamper real life treatment in cases. Like once I had spoken to a psychiatric nurse, and she said that some of the patients they weren't accepting treatment because they thought the patient was possessed. We see this in our culture, a lot of black magic and stuff like that. It's a real thing, but that doesn't allow them to get proper treatment. So yes, so yeah, I totally understand and resonate with what you have spoken of, Bindu. Now, I'd like to say a shout out to those who have joined in these conversations. I'm sorry, because of some tech issues, I can't personally address your comments. Udunma, so good to see you again. Krishan, Jack, Baksol, I don't know who you are, Baksol. I probably know you, but it's strange. It's an interesting name that you have on your profile. Shirinity, yeah, good to have you as well. So thank you for joining in, and I hope I haven't missed out on anyone. Yes. So now I'm going to go back to Aman. Aman, this can be addressed. This is probably addressed to all of you if you think of something that you could contribute to this conversation. Aman, best practices, that you have seen, like to about cultural fusion that could help and aid in our brain health, mental health, in your experience. Yeah, please. There's going to be a lot,
No,
all
look,
of
I
you.
think there is so much I have to say about that. Thanks, Shyam, for that. Look, but before that, I still want to just quickly respond to a couple of things that were discussed so far. One was about the evolving identity. I think that's so, Kaichia, you brought it up, Shyam, you talked about it as well. And I just want to highlight here, there's not only evolving identity, but multiple identities, right? Cultural identity. Culture is not only language, nationality, ethnicity, religion. Culture could also be based on your occupation, could be based on your age, could be based on your gender. And we all live with multiple identities, and we are navigating them and negotiating them. Yesterday, when I was running a panel for an organization on multi-cloud competencies, I asked participants to rank their identities. I was very surprised that the occupational identity actually came to number 4. So out of about 9 factors that we identified there. So just to bear in mind that evolving multiple levels of identity that we have, and when we talk about cultural fusion, we actually talk about cultural fusion across those identities. Another side that I think that was mentioned in discussion is language. I think language is so important. We need to have so much more awareness, and there's so much that needs to be changing there. For example, when we have phrases like the dark side of history, do we want to have a language like that, for example? I mean, if you think about it, it's a language that we use without really thinking about the implications. But if you delve a bit deeper and dig into it, you will see that there's so much inherent bias in those languages. I think we have to be really careful. And I extend this to even the conversations we have. Oh, don't be a girl, don't cry, those kind of things. You see, so language, I think, is really important for that cultural inclusivity space that we are talking about. And finally, Dr. Bindu spoke about the issue of culture and stigma when it comes to her area, but I'll say no. It's pronounced no more. It's pronounced not any strong in any other field but mental health, because in mental health we see how there's so much stigma that comes from the different cultures about what it means to seek help, for example. So look, with that sort of as a foundation, I'll just delve into what you talked about, which is about best practices. And now I'll move from, I talked previously more about the brain and how the brain works, and now more to the culture part, really on day-to-day life, right? First of all, I want to again go back to the concept of cultural fusion, right? And as I said, cultural fusion is about integrating different cultures, and there could be different models of this. No one right model. The American model, for example, of multiculturalism, right, is the melting pot. Pros and cons might be there, but that's their model. Some other countries follow a more multicultural model, for example, that it's not really a melting pot that we are creating a new identity, but really different cultures blending together. But irrespective of this, cultural fusion means that we live and engage and grow together with people with different communities, with different cultures. And how do we do that in an effective way? That's the question that we have there. So first and foremost, it's communication. We need to communicate effectively for this. This is both a mindset as well as skills. When it comes to mindset, it is really about acceptance. And I'm not talking about tolerance. I'm talking about acceptance. Beyond tolerance, we have to accept our differences and appreciate and recognize that to come together in society. And when we talk about acceptance here, I also don't want to make it all rosy. There may be some activities by a group or some thing that they do that does not fit with the moral compass. And that's perfectly fine. As a mental health professional, I'll tell you that we have to be always self-aware of our bias, our prejudice, our values, even when we feel that it's politically incorrect. Because only then we can actually work on it to be more accepting. When I know what my weakness is, when I know that this is something that is hard for me to accept, I'll work on how to see how I can accept it. And I want to introduce here to us the idea that we can accept without endorsement. And this is even in across cultures, because to expect that we have to endorse everything, endorse and approve everything is actually ideally in the ideal world. Of course, we want to do that. But realistically, given that we all have our cultural assumptions and biases, it's not possible. But at least the basic level that we can come to is that as accepting, even if there is no endorsement there. And where do we see this? Not only in society, but even in families. Parents who have to accept the lifestyles of their children, or children who have to accept their lifestyle of parents, for example. So to create that cultural fusion, again, I brought in cultural fusion from cultures to even age groups and all. We do need to have that acceptance as a really important part. And once we have that, I strongly say that we will, once we start to see each other in terms of our similarities and differences, with the emphasis on understanding and acceptance, we'll have much more peace in the world. We'll have much more harmony. I think we'll see much lesser religious or racial conflict that we see in different countries of the world. And I want to also cite here two quotes which are really important to me. One is more in a family context, but I think can be applicable to multicultural aspects as well. And that is by Virginia Satir, the very well-known family therapist, who said that our similarities bring us together, but our differences allow us to grow together. And the world, such a much more interesting place being diverse, right? Imagine all of us if we ate the same food, ate the same language, wore the same clothes. By the way, I'm intentionally wearing this batik today because today we're talking about culture, right? So I'm bringing that in. But imagine we all dressed, looked, acted the same, or ate the same, or the same songs. How boring this world would be. And by the way, fun fact: even though I'm of a South Asian ethnic background or Indian ethnic background, I do enjoy canto pop, for example, Chinese music a fair bit. So that's an example, fun fact there. So I wanted to share that. And again, look, I mean, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I just want to, carry on this conversation a bit by another quote. President Obama once said, right, that the world would, and I'm paraphrasing it, the world would be much happier and much better place if we realize even the person on the other side cares the same thing about their families, cares the same thing about the people around them, cares the same thing about well-being. And that's where we have to realize that differences are there, and we recognize them, respect them, accept them, acknowledge them, and then as we accept it, we also realize what brings us together. So look, it starts with self-awareness, and I'll say that when you said practical best practices, it starts with self-awareness. I'll carry on and just tell you a quick few other things that can help. What I would say, two concepts: cultural intelligence and cultural humility. Cultural intelligence, very simple, just like IQ, EQ. We need to have cultural intelligence in this diverse world that we're working in. All our work, whether we are mental health professionals or working in the hospice sector, has been affected by this. Before this, the client population was diverse, but now even the mental health professionals come from diverse backgrounds. So we do have to navigate different cultures and develop that cultural intelligence, but also have cultural humility, which is a lifelong willingness to learn. I can be proud of my culture, but that doesn't mean that I have to be arrogant about it. I can be proud of my culture. That doesn't mean that I cannot respect another culture. And that's really the basic principle of self-awareness. From that, I think being careful that we don't make any assumptions and be aware about it. You see, to stop making assumptions and biases, we have to be aware about it. And that's why I keep highlighting the importance of self-awareness. What are your assumptions? What are your biases? Recognize them. Only then you can work on it to be more open-minded. Learn, read, research. There's a lot of information out there, but I'll put a caveat there, because when you're learning, yes, even Hofstede's dimensions, please don't generalize entirely. Not all Chinese are same, not all Indians are same, not all Malays are same. Even within those groups, right, there are attributes. So recognize the differences just as you learn. Expose yourself. As a mental health professional, I'll tell you, if you have a client from a, let's say, Middle Eastern background, and you haven't really had much interaction with them, go watch a Middle Eastern drama on Netflix. Go to a Middle Eastern restaurant and spend your afternoon there. So cultivate.
I can see Aman is like totally passionate about this topic.
Oh, no. This is, look, multiculturalism, because I see myself product of multiculturalism, right? So, I mean, again, and to, like I said, right, Bengali parents, Malaysia, to extend this further, I grew up in Malaysia, Muslim majority country, but I went to a private school where essentially with entirely Chinese, all Chinese friends. So I've had this exposure of the Indian culture, the Muslim culture, the Chinese culture. So it's something very close to my heart, and that's why I get so excited. So just to quickly wrap up, because I don't want to take all the time up there, right? That
you've taken a lot of time up.
Okay, learn, expose yourself, and learn how to I think final words, learn how to develop empathy for someone who's not similar to you.
All right, learn how to develop empathy for someone who's not similar to you. I like the part about, it's not just about tolerance. It's not about tolerance, it's about acceptance. And a beautiful quote that you shared, we come together because of our similarities, but we grow together because of our differences. That's so beautiful. I didn't quite catch the second quote. Please share it with us again, perhaps in the chat or perhaps offline. That's so wonderful. Thank you for that, Amran. Now, Bindu and Chia, you've heard a lot from Amran. Would you like to add to it? Bindu, I'll start with you first. There was a lot to take in. But I think most of us resonate with whatever Aman said. What would your thoughts be right now?
Okay, so you were talking about how we can solve the issue of this mental impairment that happens. And as you had mentioned earlier, I'm going to focus on my subjects or my cancer patients. Now, I would say that it's rather a sin that you should not commit, a sin that is common to all cultures, all races in our society. And that sin is not accepting a cancer survivor as a normal person. I mean, see, no one calls you a COVID survivor. No one treats you as, oh, a person who has suffered COVID, the end statement of every sentence you say once you are out of COVID. But the same doesn't apply to a cancer survivor. Cancer patients, during their long treatment, they lose their jobs. They become financially, I'm just giving you an example, they become financially bankrupt. After they come out, they have to be re-employed. But what does our society do? Do they treat them the same? Do they give them the same opportunities? Are they ready to give them another life? Let's go a little more internal. Take it into their daily lives. What about children? They go back to school. Their parents of other kids call them that cancer kid. Don't associate with them. You don't know, you might get it. What about at home? Do you think cancer patients are treated at normal at home? They're treated like they're delicate. They have to have special healthy foods, which are, Google searched and said that these are good foods for cancer patients. They're not allowed into the normal decisions. They are, okay, chemo brain, or maybe they're too delicate to handle normal decisions. Is that an environment that facilitates them to come back and live a normal life that they deserve because they don't have their cancer? Go to elderly people, it's the same thing. They're not allowed to hold their grandkids. What if the grandkids get their cancer? So avoid this sin, and you will help innumerable patients, innumerable friends, innumerable relatives who suffer something like cancer and who survive out of it. Now, if you talk about cultural differences, in the Western culture, it is not as, I'm not saying it's not there, it's there. It's not as much as a problem. Why? Because they are financially independent and not as dependent on family as we are. At one point of time, we might reach there, but before we reach there, you can just educate yourself and make the difference, be the difference. Start with each one of us, because there is a cancer patient in everyone's life, whether it's a relative, a friend, an acquaintance. Even if there wasn't in the past, be sure there will be one in the future. You can make a difference in their lives. So that is my message. Back to you, Sharmini.
Beautifully said, Bindu, and so very important. It's when you treat, as you said, a cancer survivor in a way that's different, you're disempowering them in their already uh, challenging situation of, bodily, physical situation, and you're just disempowering them psychologically as well. And it's so important for us to recognize, to treat them as a normal human being as much as it's possible. Of course. That's so beautifully said, and beautifully, so important when we meet patients of not just cancer. I think even there are other afflictions that people have, like for instance Parkinson, and some that just changes people's lives. But we need to understand their minds. They're just the normal, intelligent, wise selves, and we should appreciate and acknowledge that always, even for senior citizens. I was just reading an article today about how when you get older and people, kind of dismiss you for even employment, even though you have a lot to contribute. And I think it's so important for us to recognize the individual and the capacity they have to contribute in whichever way, whether it's psychological, whether it's physiological, whether it's physical. So yeah, Bindu, thank you so much for reminding that about us. All of us have people who are, challenged in having some disease that's really limiting them. And thank you so much for sharing that. Chia, would you like to add anything to what Aman and Bindu have said? Last two sentences, yeah. You sorry to give you so little time. We're running out of time, but yeah, go ahead, yeah. Speak from your heart.
It's very true what Bindu said. That actually sometimes we take a lot of power out of the patient. We say, oh, we decide everything for them. But to a certain extent, I've come across with the IC patient at home. Sometimes because of the age or whatever is it, they actually also because you see, when a person has problem, The issue of taking care of that person is a great issue. Who is going to take care? Sometimes finance comes in. If you want to employ a private nurse, it's not cheap. If you want to send to a nursing home, it's also not cheap. So sometimes there is different factors to look into. Yes, I will say that sometimes like parents are overprotective. That it takes a lot of life up from the patient. You see, when you don't allow patients to do this, I say for example, this lady likes gardening. And because she's 12 months, the children actually doesn't allow her to go back to the garden. So she had to sit at home, watch TV, and just have all the nutrition food and everything. And then, like, what is she living for? That's what we say, we take away their empowerment. But if you look at the children, if you close down again, what are we going to do? I don't have the money to send her to all these kind of things. It's not an easy thing to sometimes say who is right and who is wrong. But for me, I do believe that if within my capability, I will allow that patient to have much say in whatever they want. But then there's limitations to it. So to draw the boundary is not an easy job. It's quite a difficult job. Where do we draw the boundaries? You see? So it's like basically this type of care is very dynamic, and also actually it depends on the patients themselves. You see, patients who have always been like independent, they make decisions. These are the hardest thing for them to take. To say no, that means they have been looking after your children. All your children say no to this, no to that to you. It becomes actually very what they call it. It takes away a lot of their skill to live. But people have always been submissive. That is not a big issue.
Chia, I will have to stop you now because Andrea has come up. That's a sign that we need to wrap up. Thank you so much, Arman, Bindu, Chia, for adding so much value to this conversation and discussion. I have learned so much. I have appreciated some things that I've taken for granted. You know, there's so many things that we touch upon. It's a very deep subject, as Andrea first told me when she, proposed this topic. It's a very deep subject, and we could go on for this on this conversation. But what we've come to is respect the individual despite cultural differences, and just start with ourselves. We started to do something, as Bindu said, we can start with ourselves to do things a little better, to realize and help whoever's close to us in a better way. And ultimately, it's going to help us as well. Yes, so we're ending it. Thank you so much, panelists. You've been wonderful. And I'm so honored to have been part of this panel discussion. Andrea, it's yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I just would like to say thank you for the discussion. All of you brought a different perspective, definitely, to the discussion all overall, because all of you are coming from different backgrounds, right? So I think that's really beautiful. And I think it's also good that you came from a perspective of the patient, of the person who actually is concerned with the brain health itself, right? So it's our own brain that we have to take care of, and sometimes we get into this confusion: who has the responsibility about all this, what we have here inside our head? And it's such a deep topic, such a beautiful topic, and we could talk about this much more. I think thank you so much for bringing all the points, Arman, for bringing your professional backgrounds, for Dr. Bindu for bringing the view of the stigmatism, the label, the tokenism, the putting that label there and then making people feel different just because they are what they are and suffering what they suffer. Why would they don't want to be treated differently, right? Because it's the same life that they are living and given in this earth. And Miss Chia bringing all the perspective and the beautiful way of how we can help people pass beautifully according to cultures, how we can support them in the last minutes, and how we can actually take another perspective on this whole issue and raise awareness about it in a country where that might be a bit difficult because everyone has a different religion and everyone has different cultural customs around passing by. And thank you also, Sharm, for bringing your personal perspectives and your story and bringing your guests. So beautiful panel. Thank you so much. We will
Thank you, Andrea, for this opportunity. Yes.
Continue
you
the
so much.
discussion after. Please make sure you connect and you all reach out to each other, because that's why we are doing this whole summit, so that after the summit you can stay connected, do things together, raise more awareness together, and reach more people. So thank you so much for doing all this. Let's go. Have a beautiful Saturday. Thank you for taking your Saturday off for this event, and see you again. Hopefully see you at the networking event. And also thank you for the people watching us. It's very good, beautiful.
Thank you everybody for participating. We truly appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.